Am I muted or no? This meeting of the Tennessee Higher Education Commission is called to order. Thank you, everyone, for being here today. I know we have a couple of people are going to be coming in a few minutes. We will start by calling roll. No one is joining virtually, correct? Or
I believe Commissioner, no one is joined virtually at this time. If Commissioner Wharton does join, we will let you know.
okay, so committee roll call with it. Okay,
Chairwoman Scarlett,
here.
Commissioner Cope, Commissioner Allman, Commissioner Knight,
Here.
Commissioner Coben, Commissioner Matlock, Commissioner Moser, Commissioner Stafford,
Present.
Commissioner Wharton, Commissioner Winton, Secretary Hargett, Treasurer Lillard, Commissioner Morrison,
Nathan James for Commissioner Morrison.
Comptroller Mumpower. Chairwoman, you have 8 members present, 7 voting members, and a quorum.
Thank you, Madam Secretary. With no questions or objections, I will entertain a motion and a second to adopt the agenda for today's meeting.
Second.
Wonderful. With no objection, do we do roll call vote since we're not? Voice vote. Okay, voice vote. All in favor? Aye. Anyone opposed? Wonderful. Then we will move forward. The motion carries. The next item is public comment. Dr. Gentile, has anyone requested public comment?
No, ma'am.
Well, thank you. And next up, we have the approval of the minutes. With no questions or objections, I will entertain a motion and a second to adopt the minutes from November 16th, 2023.
So moved.
Okay, excellent. All in favor? Any opposed? Motion carries. Well, wonderful. That kind of starts with me, I guess. Good morning, everyone, and thank you all for joining THEC meeting, first one of 2024. Happy New Year. I think we can still say that. I've mentioned this before, but I do want to reinforce that I believe that we're still remain at this inflection point in higher ed and what it means for the future of work specifically. Families continue, there's consistent headlines that I'm seeing of families continuing to question the value of any kind of higher education, especially when you can go down the street and work at a fast food or a Buc-ee's making $40,000 a year. From outside, higher education seems to be okay, I'd say, with the Blockbuster model. For those of you that remember Blockbuster, so not everyone does. But you might remember Netflix came along and they started sending us DVDs in the mail, and now it's all streaming services. Consumers have moved on. So the question is, has higher education moved on? Have we been able to support higher education in a way that takes us to the next level? Would it make sense to take a priority issue for our state, like computer science, for example, or teacher talent, which is so needed inside of our K-12 schools to prepare our students to step into higher ed? Would it make sense to take one of those ideas and come up with some long-term practical solutions to that's challenging every part of Tennessee? Taking on a pilot program or something like that could really create a force multiplier through our learnings across the state. I'll give you a couple of examples. For education, for example, K-12 education, Lipscomb University and Teach for America consistently are ranking in the top 2 of highest quality education programs in our state. What can we learn from that? Every single family that has kids, their kids are going to school, right? We need high quality teachers in every single classroom. We need high quality leaders running those schools and in the districts. How can we replicate what Lipscomb and TFA are doing? A second example is Blue Cross Blue Shield. They created this fantastic program. They pushed to create a computer science program where students graduate with a bachelor's degree in computer science and an opportunity for a job with Blue Cross Blue Shield in 2.5 years. It's not the typical 4-year program. Blue Cross came to the table and said, we know this is important. How can we solve that? It's a matching of connection between the industry and higher education. I encourage us to challenge ourselves as higher education convening policy body to think bigger, reimagine the future of Tennessee higher education, and take on the tough issues the sacred cows, if you will. Let's really address our retention and completion rates. They are not good enough today. Let's truly integrate and partner with employers and the world of work to develop more career-focused models. I know we'll hear from President Oldham later, and he's thinking about this. Let's also give each other the space to reimagine the role and the purpose that higher education has. How do we think bigger than we are today? Because the business world has moved on. Are our students prepared to step into all the jobs of today and tomorrow? As we slide into this year, 2024, we're moving into a new legislative session. I know that makes a lot of people very excited. And as we have new leadership in place, thank you, Dr. Gentile, I'd like to plant a flag today around a few driving questions that I'd like us to come back to again and again and again. We can set the expectation that the Tennessee Higher Education Commission can and should drive a conversation towards the future of higher education alongside the future of work. What if we considered testing just how far we can push our completion funding formula around the highest priorities and the opportunities for Tennessee? For high-need roles, how can we ensure employers sit side by side with our academic institutions to crosswalk work competencies and curricula leading to student employment? Think about what Blue Cross Blue Shield has done, along in partnership with ETSU. How can we use data to highlight the areas where we should be doubling down and the places that need immediate attention? These are a few outcomes-based questions that I encourage us to keep on coming back to the table with over and over. We've got to increase our completion rate and ensure we have strong job placement for our students. I believe that everyone in this room and beyond want our students to live a life in a rewarding career or job, regardless of what that is. 2024 is the year that we can lean in to help create stronger career pathways for all of our students in Tennessee. Our committee meetings yesterday were really, the one that I sat in both, I guess. The first one was about academics and access and completion. We had really informative. We had great conversations, as did the Finance Committee meeting in the afternoon. And I hope to hear more and more of the questions that were bubbling up in these conversations. So I'm happy that we set those committees. So thank you to the Commission for going down that pathway and for the staff for helping us have those conversations. We do have a light agenda today, but we will start to turn it over with our new permanent director, Dr. Stephen Gentile. You're recognized.
Thank you, Chairwoman Scarlett, members of the Commission, and those in the audience today. It's a pleasure to see a lot of friendly faces here in the audience. We have President Licari from Austin Peay State University, President Oldham from Tennessee Tech, who we'll hear from in a little while. You have Claude Presnell from THEC, who is here, and you have Interim President of Volunteer State Community College, Russ Deaton. I saw him earlier. There he is, all the way in the back. And we have a number of our provosts, CFOs, and members of our partner organizations here today as well. It's a pleasure to see everyone. Thank you. I'd like to always recognize new staff that we have. We have actually just one new staff. She's an intern, Caroline LePlue. She is a doctorate, receiving her doctorate in English at MTSU. She is not here today, but she did sit through all 3 committee meetings that we had yesterday. So good for her, not nodding off at all. I'm happy for her to be here. As an intern, she'll be working on our OER initiative, the Open Educational Resources, under our Chief Academic Officer and the Academic Review Team as well. In front of you guys today, we have a number of materials. First of all, we have the SOAR TSU Live Wings Up overview. We'll be hearing from President Oldham. We have a food insecurity report in hard copy form in front of you as well. We'll be hearing from Dr. Jacob Kamer on that as well. We have a one-pager on our Tennessee Reentry Connect. We'll be hearing about that program. We have a lot of information items today. And then also, thank you to Jessie Green. She created for us a 2023 year in review of our successes from across our bureaus and our divisions. That's in front of you. We've not done that before. It's always good to look back and say what worked well and how can we continue that moving forward. Again, it is an honor to be here in front of you today. I was going to say it was the greatest honor of my life, but then I thought my wife might be watching, so I decided not to do that. It is an honor for me to be in front of you today, and I appreciate this opportunity here. Back in early December, I sat down off-site with Chairwoman Scarlett and walked her through a rather detailed 90-day plan that I had. Things I wanted to meet in the first 30 days. I gave myself to mid-January due to the holidays, mid-February, and mid-March as well. From that detailed plan, about 6 overarching themes came out of that process. 2 of them are more pertaining to me as a leader and a manager, and me connecting with external resources on higher education to be sure that I am plugged in going forward to what's happening across this country. The other 4 pertain more to what's happening in our organization and setting that vision and strategic alignment for the future. I'm going to talk about the organizational effectiveness here in a second, as well as that vision. But first, I want to start off with the first 2 themes that really sprung up from that 90-day plan. And that's what I've been working on the first 30 days. That is maintain and create a pattern of constant stakeholder engagement. That's something I feel that we were not doing that well in the past from the executive director perspective, and that we need to pick back up. And so how we meet with legislators, how we meet with presidents, the administration, developing that pattern. I spent a lot of January meeting with the House Education and Senate Education to continue that going forward, and identifying what's the best way to be sure that we are connecting with all of our stakeholders, including the commission. Second is communication, telling our story. We do a lot at THEC. So many things that we don't even speak to. And so our story can get crowded out by other stories. Developing a comm strategy with Jesse Green and effectively communicating that out over time, whether it's our passive communication, we're doing an audit of our website, whether it's our active communication, how do we speak to what we're working on, and what's that pattern moving forward to be able to get that word out there. The other 2 themes, organizational effectiveness, number 1 from that. My biggest plan for the first 30 days was to meet with every single staff, every division here at THEC. I've had 7 meetings with all the different bureaus and divisions here, and identifying with them, how can we be working better as an organization? What do we need to do to start? What do we need to stop? And what do we need to continue in order to unify our higher education ecosystem to work towards meeting the goals of Tennessee? From that, I got 3 main themes. Number 1, we have fantastic staff, brilliant staff, some of the best staff in the state, who have not a shortage of ideas. About 200 starts came from that conversation, which quadrupled more than anything else. So a lot of things to sift through, certainly, but to be able to plug into what they're seeing and what they're thinking is critical. Organizational effectiveness from that meeting also focused on how we can be operating better as an organization internally, having better communication internally, processes to make sure that we're not stepping on each other, that we know who's doing what and who do we need to go to be better there. And then also, how can we better add to the capacity of our institutions, at our campuses, at our partnering organizations? We have a lot of parties out there who can benefit from just us bringing them together, coordinating and convening, and talking to best practices, and then also bringing up their operations with regards to financial aid and other data resources. The other theme, that vision, that strategic alignment, articulating that better going forward. Everyone in this room, everyone I've talked to, legislators I've talked to, our staff, all agree that higher education is a key answer and key solution to ensuring that we have Tennesseans who are able to accomplish their goals, families, communities, and the state to be stronger. They could all be stronger with higher education. I had a great lunch a couple of weeks ago with Commissioner Matlock and learning about how he's desiring all the time for his staff to improve and have that career trajectory and to have better their lives in the future. And he sees the higher education community as helping create that visual, create that alignment. And that's what we need to do as an organization. But THEC itself has the responsibility and the mandate to be that entity that unifies all the higher education organizations and our partners. It's why we were created. We do that well in some spaces, not well in others. But we need to lean into our ability to convene groups, to share best practices, to, as Commissioner Scarlett said, to be able to use our data to help bring up capacity at our institutions, then also to lean into the policies that we have. We have some pretty strong policy levers, whether it be outcomes-based funding formula, financial aid, academic program approval, to help align those to the needs of the state. We are mandated, again, to be that unifying force for higher education. Right now, we have 3 things in front of us that we're trying to accomplish, that I want us to accomplish. I'll talk about them quickly. Number 1, we've had lots of conversations about capital and academic program approval processes over the last 6 months, I'd say, 5 to 6 months. That's something that we hit the ground running and tackling and making sure that we can address what the needs of the state are, what the institutions need from us in those processes. In early December, we convened a capital task force that included the constitutional officers, it included institutional presidents. We had members of the legislature and those from the administration to convene and talk about what's working, what's not with our capital task force or capital outlay process. We are currently working on revisiting that process and creating a new one to bring back to that body and to set the pathway forward to make it more in the needs of the state and the institutions. 2, yesterday, we had a committee where we reviewed a policy change that's on the agenda today for our academic program approval process, and also changes we can implement with no policy changes to our academic program approval process and the procedures. On average, it can take upwards of a year for a program to make its way through our commission for approval. The changes we've identified yesterday, we believe can streamline that from 3 to 6 months, even more as well. So tackling those head on. 2, what we need to do in unifying our higher education ecosystem, problems that have long plagued higher education, and Chairwoman Scarlett spoke to this already, completion, retention. They continue to be low. They have increased over time. Complete College Tennessee Act, through the outcomes-based funding formula, we have seen increases in our graduation rates in the community college sector and the university sector. They're still low. We have a lot of work to do there to help align our policies and make sure that we can increase them. Second, and this is something that has come up often, I want to thank Nathan and James for bringing this up in the past, our articulation and transfer between our sectors. To unify our higher education sector and communities, we need to make sure that if Tennessee Promise is sending students on to a community college, and those students want to get a bachelor's degree, that they can be able to transfer quickly onto a university as they need to. CCTA, again, the Complete College Tennessee Act, called on the state, under THEC's guidance, to formulate 50 Tennessee transfer pathways in the highest frequency pathways from community college to university. The good news is we have 69 Tennessee transfer pathways. The bad news is that every single one of those pathways has what we call an asterisk that says, actually, this institution will require something extra or a different course to be able to transfer in with your associate degree. In total, we have 233 asterisks across all 69 of our Tennessee transfer pathways. I think that's a problem we need to minimize and eliminate to be able to streamline our communication to our institutions. What's more, a third of our associate degree transfers are in Tennessee transfer pathways. The other 2/3 are not. They're in non-Tennessee transfer pathways. I know TBR has been working vigorously alongside our universities to address these over time. THEC needs to better lean into that conversation and to communicate the data that we have on it, to identify how we can highlight the programs that are working well and what needs to work elsewhere. Over the next 2 months, Julie Roberts and her team will be holding transfer summits across the state to focus on this issue and more. So if 2 is looking back at problems that have long plagued us, 3 is looking forward. What can we do differently? How can we better transform higher education? Leaning into data. We heard this a lot from this commission. I've heard it from presidents and provosts when we've convened them in the past. THEC has the data. We need to utilize it better. We need to project forward what are the needs of the state? What are the academic programs that we need across the state? And communicate that and have that guide our policy when it comes to academic program approval. THEC also needs to make sure that we are plugging better into the workforce conversation. I had a great meeting early in January with our workforce development team with Mitch Curry at the helm there. And we talked about what's the possibilities that we can do? What policies can we lean into? How can we better be a part of the apprenticeship conversation? How can we tie apprenticeships better to higher education? and degrees that we have. That's something that we'll be exploring here in the coming months. And then finally, looking at the credentials of value, I want to give a nod to also our workforce development team, Julie Roberts. SCORE has been talking about this a lot recently as well. What are credentials of value? How do we define them? How do we use them to better students, their families, the communities, and the states? And then what resources can we use to help build those credentials of value across our higher education ecosystem? So those are the things that I'm working on right now with my team and my staff and the board. Thank you very much for entertaining my conversations with you on these subjects. I'll be meeting with institutions across the state on it as well. Again, we have that mandate, unify higher education, to accomplish these goals. I'm looking forward to working with you, all of you, on that going forward. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you very much, Dr. Gentile. Our first action item is the consent calendar. There are 2 items on the consent calendar with no objection. We will vote on them as a set. If there are no questions or objections, hearing. Looking for a second.
Second.
And we still, Commissioner Wharton is not on the phone, correct?
That's correct.
Okay, so all in favor? Any opposed? Excellent, motion carries. Now we'll move on to the regular calendar. The first items we have are 2 academic policy revisions. Academic Policy A1.0, which is a new academic programs, approval process, and academic policy. A16, expedited academic programs approval process. With no objection, we will vote on these revisions as a set. Commissioner Takasha Winton, Chair of the Academics Access and Student Success Committee, will provide an overview of the agenda item and the committee's recommendation. Commissioner Winton?
Good morning, everyone. Thank you for that, Chairman Scarlett. So the first meeting of 2024, Dr. Stephanie Ballard Chase gave us an update on the post-secondary education authorization, and then shortly after, Dr. Julie Roberts gave information about the new academic programs that was just mentioned by the chairlady. The bulk of the discussion during our meeting was focused on the potential changes to the academic approval process. There were lots of questions asked and answered, and if anyone is interested in any additional discussion about it, Dr. Julie Roberts is here and can answer any questions.
Are there any questions for the commission? All right. Thank you very much, Commissioner Winton. Since there's no questions, I will entertain a motion and a second for the agenda items.
Second.
Okay, with no objection, let's see, all in favor? Any opposed? Wonderful, motion carries. Our next item is the rule repeal. Treasurer Lillard is here. Chair of the Finance and Operations Committee will provide an overview of the agenda item and the committee's recommendation. Treasurer Lillard?
Thank you, Madam Chair. This rule repeal was considered by the committee yesterday and unanimously recommended for adoption by the commission. It basically is a housekeeping matter dealing with the rules, and we had a presentation from the Associate General Counsel who's available to answer any questions. I move approval.
Second.
Excellent. Because it's the rule, we'll have to take a roll call vote. Madam Secretary?
Chairwoman Scarlett?
Aye.
Commissioner Cope? Commissioner Knight?
Aye.
Commissioner Coben? Commissioner Matlock? Commissioner Stafford?
Aye.
Commissioner Winton? Secretary Hargett? Treasurer Lillard?
Aye.
Comptroller Mumpower?
Aye.
Chairwoman, you have 10 ayes.
Wonderful. Motion carries. Thank you all very much. Next up, we'll hear from Dr. Phil Oldman, President of Tennessee Tech University, to provide an institutional report for Tennessee Tech. Dr. Oldman, you're recognized.
Oh, thank you, Madam Chair, members of the commission. It's great to be with you today. Greetings from the Upper Cumberland and Cookeville. So something I've heard fairly often over the last 12 years of being at Tennessee Tech are things like this. Once somebody comes and visits Tennessee Tech is, wow, Tennessee Tech is a well-hidden secret, or it's a hidden gem. I've told all my folks I hate hearing those things, and our job is to stop that in the future. And so part of my task this morning is to briefly, give all of you sort of a high-altitude view of Tennessee Tech. I know some of you are familiar with us. Some of you may have never been to campus. And so I've provided each of you one of our recent view books. You can glance through that at your leisure and get a feel for what goes on at Tennessee Tech. But I'll give you some of that context. But I want to start out real quick, sort of starting where Chair Scarlett took off this morning about the relevance of higher education, particularly in Tennessee today. And I really believe that that's the future of higher education. It's really important that we stay focused on that. In my view, there are three primary areas that are most important to students and likewise to families and communities and the state as a whole. And it all revolves around putting the student first in everything that you do. Their interests, their futures have to be our top priority. And it's all about relevance, it's all about value, and it's all about response. We've got to continue to be relevant. Once we cease to be relevant, nobody cares, and we're no longer of any value to anybody. We also have to be valuable. We have to provide a valuable experience, something that's recognized by students and others, that it's worth their time and it's worth their personal investment to pursue higher education. And so that value proposition is incredibly important. As Chairwoman pointed out, there's this ongoing conversation around why go to college? Why is it important? Why do I need to do that? I'll speak to that in just a minute. But the other, as Executive Director Gentiles pointed out, is that response speed. We've got to be able to respond quickly, promptly, and effectively to the changing demands that society and certainly the state of Tennessee puts on us as leaders, as institutions. We can't lose sight of the fact, however, that the relevance is intrinsic and probably has never been more important than it is today. Now, just real quickly, why get a four-year college degree? Well, it's real simple, even though it gets lost in a lot of the public conversation. Graduates with a four-year degree live longer. They live about 8 years longer than non-degree earners. They earn more money. They have more stable careers. They have better job security, lower unemployment rates. They have more career options, and they have a better quality of life. I think that's what we want all of our children in the next generation to aspire to live better than we were able to live. And so the value is there. We've just got to continue to make that case and make sure that we're delivering on that promise. So how does Tennessee Tech do that? And what does Tennessee Tech look like today? Then I'll talk about a little bit where we're going, I believe. So today, Tennessee Tech has over 10,000 students, primarily serving a rural part of Tennessee, one of few public universities in Tennessee that has a predominantly rural focus. We've had two of the top four largest freshman classes in the history of Tennessee Tech the last 2 years, so we are growing. We consistently rank second best among the 10 state public universities in terms of graduation rates and retention rates. We have the best return of investment of any of the public universities in Tennessee, meaning most affordable campus coupled with the highest starting salaries of graduates. So it points to that value proposition. We do have the highest starting salaries of graduates among any of the Tennessee public universities, and it's a little unusual. Obviously, we are a technological university in name and in focus. About 40% of our students major in a science or engineering discipline, which is relatively high. Top three majors on campus currently are computer science, mechanical engineering, and biology. So we produce about most years, we produce about 25% of the engineers for the state of Tennessee. And we know from survey work that we've done, about 2/3 of those engineers stay in Tennessee for their career. We certainly place engineers at all the major engineering hubs around the country, whether it's Huntsville, Research Triangle Park, Northern Virginia, Houston, Silicon Valley. But the majority of them want to stay and invest their careers in Tennessee, in their communities, which is great for us. Little known fact here, our College of Education actually produces more high school teachers than any other university in Tennessee. And we also produce the most math and science teachers for the state of Tennessee. We need to do a lot more of those, but we're proud of that. We have, in addition to engineering, we have exceptional programs in nursing, business, agriculture, art, music. We're currently rated as a Carnegie II research university. We were awarded something north of $36 million last year in sponsored research activity, and that's growing. That's about 4 times the research funding we were receiving a decade ago. So a lot of growth in the research space. We entered into, as I indicated, we are a rural-facing institution located in the Upper Cumberland. We have a fairly significant number of economically distressed or challenged counties in our footprint. And so we have felt a very significant interest in doing something to help those parts of the state that sometimes get overlooked. We introduced a few years ago a grand challenge for the campus, something that everybody on campus, students, faculty, everybody could get behind and see where we could make a difference, where we could move the needle. So we introduced a grand challenge. We call it Rural Reimagined. So it's all about the future of rural areas in Tennessee and what our students and faculty can do to help. So as of today, we have had active projects in 69 counties throughout the state of Tennessee involving, and 7 of those are distressed, about 600 small businesses we've assisted and entrepreneurs assisted. 900 jobs have been created or saved through this effort. And about 6,000 students, faculty, and community members have all been engaged in all these. These are volunteer efforts. A limited amount of funding has gone into this, and it shows that some intellectual property as well as some sweat equity, primarily from our students, can get into some of these communities and really make a difference. And the greatest testimony to that is go talk to some of these community leaders, some of these county mayors and city execs, and ask them what difference it's making, and it's pretty substantial. And our students really love it because they're making a difference and they can see that in a very tangible way. So that's sort of what we are today. What do we need to be tomorrow? And that's where I'm mostly interested. Well, we need to be bigger. There's economy of scale. We need to be able to offer more programs. We need to be able to offer more relevant programs to more students to make a bigger difference. So we have an aspiration of growing to 12,000 students over the next 5 or 6 years. We think we're on track to do that currently. We also need to be better. That value proposition is important. We have to be able to provide a value-loaded college experience for students. So a lot of the campus improvements that we've been involved in, we've done about $400 million in capital investment in the campus itself over the last 5 or 6 years. A lot of that being assisted, obviously, with the help of the state of Tennessee, which has been fantastic over the last few years. But we've got a lot more to do. So currently, we've opened up a new laboratory science building. We're about to open up a new engineering building, working on a second. We have a new student event center in the planning, a new innovation center and residence hall, a new West Side football stadium, pedestrian mall, and multiple complete renovations of the historic parts of campus that is important. We also need to continue to enhance, expand our academic offerings, which we've been very active in that as well with THEC's help. We've introduced programs in animal science. We've got a new one coming up in nuclear engineering that you'll hear about in the next few months. Business, information technology, logistics, cybersecurity, industrial engineering, engineering management, community health and nutrition, counseling and supervision. You'll notice that all of these areas have a very easy, direct impact on careers and making a difference in communities. That the relevance issue is important. We also need to do a lot more in terms of research. Creating, in my view, the two things that universities do when we're doing what we should do, that we do well, is we create and disseminate knowledge. And that creation of new knowledge is very important. It's not just spitting back out what we learned 20 years ago. It's keeping things fresh and on the cutting edge, and that's what universities should be doing. And research is incredibly important to that. The other thing that we do well is to identify and develop talent. Okay, that's all about the student. It's an interest, university, higher education is a really interesting business, and I get in trouble sometimes on campus when I talk about it as being a business, but we are, because we have people pay a fee to get a service from us. It's important that we do that well. But we're the most unique business I think you can find, and that because where else will the customer and the product be the same thing? And that's what we do. The student is the customer, comes in at least as a customer, but it leaves the university as a product. And it's important that that product be high quality and they be prepared. And so we've got to continue to push on the creation of knowledge and with more research that leads to significant economic impacts on the region and on the nation. So they're relevant. So we currently have a lot of projects going on in areas like sustainable aviation, electric vehicles, cybersecurity, artificial intelligence, autonomous systems, wildlife and fisheries conservation, food protection and safety, data networking, energy efficiency, rural innovation. I could go on and on. These are all, again, areas of great relevance that are making a difference. And as our students actively learn through that process of research and discovery, they not only become better educated, but they're more motivated to get out and make a difference when they graduate. So that's what Tennessee Tech is all about. I would really invite any and all of you to come to campus sometime. I'd love to show you around. But most of all, have a chance to talk to our students, because that is the real hidden gem of Tennessee Tech. They are fantastic. So thank you for letting me share some of that with you today, and I'll be glad to answer any questions you have.
Thank you very much, Dr. Oldham. Are there any questions for Dr. Oldham? Yes, Treasurer Lillard.
Dr. Oldham, I just wanted to thank you for the good work, great work that you've done at Tennessee Tech since you've been there. I've been over there, as you know, multiple times at the campus and everything, seen the progress that's occurred over the years of your tenure. And I just wanted to note for the record here today that in the Treasury Department of about 300 employees or so, we have a number of significant leaders who are graduates of Tennessee Tech. Our Director of Accounting is an accounting graduate from Tennessee Tech, and we have an assistant treasurer who is a Tech graduate, and chief of staff and others that are all graduates of Tennessee Tech, and they're fine individuals, and you produce a quality product. So thank you for what you do for Tennessee and for everyone.
Thank you.
Any other questions? Please.
Good morning. Wings up.
Light needs to be on. That's just counterintuitive, isn't it? Hey, this is well done.
Thank you.
Tell your marketing folks it's well done. In fact, it's so well done, I just texted my wife, and for a modest name, image, and likeness deal with Ralph's Donuts, I'm willing to resume my athletic career. All right?
We will.
So
Just give us your jersey size, and we'll suit
yeah.
you up.
Well, I was thinking more golf, so I could find a golf polo. That'd be great. So, all kidding aside, you heard Dr. Gentile's great presentation, and you made a great presentation as well. And trying to marry some of the things together as we look at the future of your institution, the great institutions, and the leadership that we have. What can THEC do or not do to better serve the students of Tennessee Tech?
So it's a great question. I
Thank
think it's a
you.
really important question. As Director Gentile pointed out, I think the things that THEC does really well historically are around leadership, around sort of big ideas, statewide ideas, and that's really important. We all the institutions, and we're blessed in Tennessee. We have great options for students. They have great opportunities at all of our sister institutions across the state. And we all work really hard on our individual campuses to deliver that experience. But there needs to be an entity, I think, like THEC that can help bring us all together around big ideas and how to do that. And you know, in the years I've been back in the state of Tennessee since, I guess, 2007, I've had an opportunity to see how that can work and work really well. You know, whether it's the Complete College Tennessee Act or Tennessee Promise or a number of other things. And those are all very meaningful. And you really need that kind of leadership, I think, to bring us together around a core idea. It needs to be data-driven, and the data analytics and analysis from THEC need to be really top-notch and strong, and they have been. But I think that's also a strength area that needs to be enhanced. And so I would kind of focus on those two things. I mean, there's some maybe some housekeeping routine things that need to be done in THEC, but truthfully, I would say THEC needs to provide the leadership and the data support to drive those really big ideas. And for the most part, I would say stay out of the operational issues that are usually best done at the campus.
Okay, because you talked a lot about, and we've spent a lot of time talking about this in our committee yesterday, about the need to be faster, to respond faster to the world outside the campus. What can we not do that will help you respond more quickly to the needs of our state?
Sure, I think it gets a lot of those operational issues, you know, whether it's, and I realize some of this would be controversial, but in areas of academic programs and capital projects and tuition and other things that there's always so much nuance at the campus level that is hard to assimilate and take into consideration at a larger, in a larger venue like this. And so I would generally stay out of that. And getting back maybe philosophically to the bigger picture is, I think we need to quit trying to manage higher education of the past and really focus on how do we inspire the higher education needed for the future. And a lot of times that's hard to let go of things of the past. But, you know, and it's not to say that they weren't successful and important at the time.
Well, that's true everywhere.
It is,
It happens
absolutely.
at Tennessee Tech, it happens at THEC, it happens at Secretary of State's office.
Absolutely.
Institutions become institutionalized.
So that's probably what I would say at this point.
Thank you, Dr. Oldham.
Yeah.
Any other questions? Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Really
Appreciate
appreciate it. Next, we will hear from Cody Allen. He's the Senior Analyst at the Council on State Government Southern Office. Mr. Allen, you are recognized.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Thank you all so much for inviting me here today on this rainy, beautiful, foggy day. My name is Cody Allen. I'm a Senior Policy Analyst and the liaison to the Education Committee for the Council State Government Southern Office. You may know us by CSG South, or SLC, which is our Southern Legislative Conference and our huge annual gathering every July. Lots of folks come know us by that. We exist to serve all three branches of state government. From our founding in 1933 by Colorado State Senator Henry Walcott Toll, we are here to sort of share the knowledge and best practices from around the states with their neighbors. We know knowledge is power, and there's not always a need to reinvent the wheel. You can take something that's working in your neighboring state and adapt it to meet your specific needs. So we're here to share some information with you. Brief overview, we're broken down into regions. I'm from the Southern office, based out of Atlanta, just down the road. We monitor 15 states. Your common definition of the South, with the exception of Missouri, which some people debate a little bit, but skip ahead through some of this. Yeah, so we have lots of different leadership.
Cody, is your mic on?
Oh, the red light's on. Can
The
you
red
hear me?
light's on? Okay. Okay, we're
There you
good.
go, sorry.
My bad. Sorry.
Oh, no worries. Yeah, so we have lots of leadership development programs, which I know Mr. Scott Sloan here has been through our CALS, which is our Center for the Advancement of Leadership Skills program. So we try to take emerging state leaders from all three branches, network them with their colleagues from across the South, and sort of develop a sort of informal network of sort of colleagues around the region. And then we also have something called STAR, which is the State Transformation Action Recognition Award. It's a very competitive award. We have like 25 to 45 applicants each year. I'm proud to say that THEC has won it 3 times in a row from 2017 through 2019. We sort of joke that y'all are cut off and you can't, win any more awards from us. Of course, for your work in Tennessee Promise, Tennessee Reconnect, and your veterans program. So I know there was a lot of talk today about some of the promise, the good with THEC and the bad, but overall, y'all are a regional leader, and I'm not just saying that. It's been recognized as a regional leader in the South, and so thank you for all the work you do and the service you provide. So now that I've sort of complimented y'all and buttered you up, the meat of my presentation is just sort of a high-level overview of some of the higher education trends that we're seeing around the region. So State of the South. From 2023 until about 2 days ago, there's been more than 1,500 bills filed that touch some impact of some part of higher education. And of those, like 247 have been enacted. So higher ed is definitely popular or unpopular, depending on who you ask, in state capitals across the region. And we've seen lots of themes sort of pop up. As you know, Tennessee was an early adopter with sports betting, but some of the other states who don't have, gaming, casinos, horse racing, sports betting, they're looking at implementing those to sort of provide an additional revenue stream to support scholarships and different programs at universities. We've also seen that with sin taxes and some of the medical and recreational cannabis laws around the country, and even in some of our states in the South. Sort of diverting some of those revenues to fund healthcare provider education, because that's the healthcare workforce's critical need around the country. We're also seeing a lot of work on statewide common or direct admissions policies. In the South, Georgia, where we're based out of, in my home state, we just announced the Georgia Match program back in October, where the governor will send out a letter to all high school seniors listing the 22 technical college system institutions, as well as up to 23 or so higher ed institutions, depending on their GPA, that they are qualified to be admitted to, just to sort of let folks know that this is an option for you. There's different paths. Here's what's available. Notably, 3 institutions, Georgia Tech, UGA, and the Georgia College and State University, are not part of that, so it's not totally statewide. And then outside the South, Idaho, Hawaii, Minnesota all have a statute in place for direct admissions instead of just coming to the governor's office, which is what we've seen in Georgia and some other states. Also AI, which I heard mentioned earlier, that's a big thing in every aspect of state government. We're seeing it in education and higher ed, healthcare, legal services, everything. And so we're seeing a lot of proposals, whether it's in like Mississippi and Texas, on funding sort of centers of innovation that'll focus on training students, no matter what their sort of career or major path is, to understand what AI is and isn't. Sort of the promise, the pitfalls, the potential of it. It's a tool like any other, and so we're definitely seeing a turn away from sort of that initial push to like ban it and prohibit it and say, oh, it's just for cheating, it's for this, but more of like a literacy aspect of it. And that's also sort of tied into some non-discrimination laws. You know, there is some worry, whether it's for admissions or other procedures, about using these automated decision-making systems without human oversight to, you know, process applications, approve people for things. I haven't seen that targeted specifically at higher ed yet. It seems to be just a more general, like, hey, you can't use this for any sort of state entity. So that's definitely something that we're seeing in Kentucky, Georgia, and Texas, and a few other states. And then I know it was mentioned earlier, but looking at some of the non-tuition factors that impact enrollment and retention, I know after me, you're having a presentation on food insecurity, and that's something that we've seen a lot, or heard a lot about in, you know, West Virginia, Virginia, Texas. States are looking at how could they operate food pantries on campus, increase student enrollment in SNAP programs, and just make use of whatever community or existing state resources are available to help them so that they can stay in school and not have to drop out or, you know, have all that debt without actually having the certification or credential. And then the last two sort of trends that we've seen are both kind of aligned, but looking at sort of dual and concurrent enrollment and aligning that to the workforce needs of the state. And that kind of goes back to the transfer and articulation agreements, ensuring that kids who do take dual enrollment, that credit is accepted in all the institutions in the state. That's something that's not always the case, and so they're trying to work on that in a lot of states. Again, Georgia is doing a lot of work on that. And so briefly, I thought it'd be interesting to sort of look through some proposals that we've seen just down the road last year and this year and sort of see if that's something that other states in the South have looked at. And quite frankly, it is. So, you know, Tennessee was looking at developing a standardized entrepreneurial program at all the THEC institutions. Texas enacted a similar bill this year where they're going to create 2 different centers for entrepreneurship and innovation, one at the University of Texas at Arlington and one at Austin State University, to sort of allow students, regardless, again, of their academic or career path, to engage in entrepreneurship, startups, new and emerging technologies, sort of entering the new digital workforce. The Virginia Senate looked at a bill that would create a pilot youth entrepreneurship program. And going back to the executive director's remarks, they were looking at in Hampton Roads area, which is in southeast Virginia, connecting the local school district with the tech and community college with their higher education institution and the local community and business partners to ensure that they're all working together and not sort of having their little silos. That would be about $1.5 million to implement that sort of pilot program. It's still in discussion, so we'll see. They're working on a budget now. We've also seen AI policies. You know, there's a bill pending right now, both here in Tennessee and in Kentucky, to look at statewide working groups to govern and propose sort of an AI framework across all institutions in higher education as well as K through 12. And then I know there's another bill that's looking at extending Tennessee Promise to certain for-profit and private trade schools. But I haven't been able to see that in any other states in our region. The closest thing I could find was that there's a Senate bill in Georgia looking at allowing private and for-profit nursing schools to qualify for their Hope Scholarship, which is similar. Lastly, food insecurity. As you can see on the slides, that has been a big topic across our region, across the country, frankly. West Virginia actually has 2 different grant programs they're looking at. The first one would be about $1 million to start it up, and it would be specifically for food banks, for creating liaisons to connect students to different community-based organizations that can provide food and enroll them in SNAP and other programs like that, as well as a second student basic needs grant program, which would receive about $2 million in startup costs. That would also support housing, healthcare barriers, and other sort of issues that lead to student non-retention. So now sort of shifting into state-specific examples. Alabama, just like Tennessee, is looking at sort of tuition scholarships for National Guardsmen, both active duty. And this one is sort of allowing them to go to private or for-profit institutions. And as long as the tuition doesn't exceed the highest rate at the public institution in the state, they are eligible for reimbursement. And then more interesting and more relevant is the Students' Right to Know Act, which sort of ties back to the earlier presentation of sort of the product and the customer service aspect of higher ed. As part of that, Alabama is working on creating a portal online to allow students and families to sort of look at where are the top 50, most in-demand jobs in the state, what are the top 25 highest earning degree programs in the state, comparing the cost of tuition, cost of loan, graduation rates, retention rates across all their institutions, and then also comparing that to sort of technical college degrees, apprenticeships, the base pay for enrolling in the enlisting in the armed forces, just sort of so students can have all that information and transparency before making such a huge decision. Florida, which I know is also somewhat of a leader in the region, they did some work last year. They enacted 2 bills. Really, the first one's really focused on their veteran population and ensuring that colleges are working to be attractive and supportive of active and retired military families. And so it allows for certain universities to be designated as collegiate Purple Star campuses based on the services they provide, whether it's having a military liaison, having sort of an early enrollment period for military members, priority registration, waiving application fees, just sort of making it more of a competitive process for institutions to sort of get this ranking. And they're establishing like a tier system so that universities, again, will compete to have sort of, we're a tier 1 Purple Star institution versus tier 2 to try to attract that talent. And the second one sort of was more aligned with the economic and workforce needs of the state. They have a ranking system for preeminent and then emerging preeminent institutions. And so they just added a factor, going back to the earlier presentation, of judging these institutions based on the STEM-related research projects that feature expenditures of $50 million or more, including federal funding. And so that's sort of a factor that they're considering when they're ranking these colleges is, how much are they spending on STEM research? What are they producing?
Cody?
Yeah.
Back to that prior slide. Is that ranking then informing their performance-based funding? Is that what that is, or?
Yes, and their sort of status in the state. There's like 11 factors, I believe, and they just added the STEM-related research funding to one of them.
Okay.
So you still have to have like 8 of the 11 to be classified as an emerging institution or a preeminent institution. And so they just added the STEM-related factor. They already had, academic performance, graduation, retention, things like that.
Yeah. If I may, just real quick, some of the feedback we've gotten over the past about our outcomes funding formula. Our outcomes funding formula is, outcomes-based funding formula is a growth model. So as you improve, no matter where you are in your graduation rate from 35% to 40% or 80% to 85%, that you're being compared to yourself. We've heard from some of our institutions, this came back up in the 5-year review a few years ago, that there might be only so much more room to grow on the graduation rate if you're on the higher end versus on the lower end. We hear that frequently. In our conversations, we actually reference Florida's model as, well, there's an alternative to what we do. Not necessarily that's the direction we're going, but if you ever hear us talking about different formula models, Florida is looking at, okay, you're up here. How are you comparing next to those institutions that are in that prestige top ranking as well? So thank you.
Yeah,
Sorry,
of
go
course. And those, in Florida, it's like the University of Florida, Florida State University, USF. And so it is competitive, though. And so that's sort of breeding that competition, that academic sort of fighting for carving out a niche that will allow you to rise up to that level of being a preeminent university and getting the extra funding and designation. I already sort of talked about the Georgia Match program, but the interesting part of that is sort of building off of that. Chancellor Sonny Perdue, and former governor, is working with his colleagues at the Technical College System of Georgia to create a direct admissions program that will do earlier outreach. So instead of just reaching out to high school seniors, they're going to reach out to high school sophomores and juniors, and sort of, again, provide them with a little snapshot of here are the paths available to you, here are the outcomes of students, the average student who takes these paths, and sort of breaking down some of those silos that we see, not just in higher education, but in all aspects of state government where, you know, the higher ed is here, the technical college system is here, and they're sort of competing for the same body of students. So how can they create pathways where students can go on to all of these institutions?
Cody, I'm going to interrupt you one more time.
Yeah.
Because that's a big trend I want to also point out. The
Yeah.
direct admissions, you mentioned at the beginning of your presentation. That's a trend that's been popping up a lot in the last couple of years. You mentioned Idaho and some other states. We've been looking in, Brett's team and our college access and success team, on how we can perhaps plug into that and what that looks like. One of our former THEC colleagues, Taylor Odell, he is a assistant director of fiscal policy, worked on my team when I was doing fiscal policy. He's now a professor, and he's one of the preeminent scholars who's researching this exact direct admission. So it's good to be able to plug into him, and he'll be talking with our group about that in the future.
Yeah,
So thank you.
absolutely. Yeah, and you're right. It's definitely a trend. It does seem like there is a lot of researchers looking into it. Just in our work, we haven't seen any definitive
Right.
confirmation that it
Yeah,
definitely works or definitely doesn't work. But it is something that everyone's looking at and studying, which tells you that it may be something worth considering if everyone's looking at it. So Kentucky is interesting. I mentioned the AI bill, and I'll sort of go into that. So again, it's really focused on not prohibiting or banning or limiting the use of AI, but more creating safe guardrails so that students and staff are using this technology appropriately, ethically, and effectively. And then the other measure is, again, they have a rural area in southeast Kentucky in Hazard County, which is an ex-coal community featuring population decline, changing workforce needs, all the things you've kind of heard about being an issue for higher ed. And so in sort of examining what to do, they did a huge study looking at whether they should establish a new four-year residential public university, purchase a private university, or establish a satellite residential campus of an existing regional public university. The report was not very optimistic about any of those options, no surprise, and instead sort of creatively suggested taking the existing Hazard County Community and Technical College that exists there, building a residential facility attached to it, and sort of allowing them the flexibility to offer some four-year degrees, particularly in the high-need areas. So like they're shifting more into a manufacturing economy from a coal-dominated economy. And so sort of just giving that flexibility, institutional flexibility to sort of, you know, they're part of the technical college system, but they're also engaged in traditional higher education. And so just really providing more flexible pathways for students in that area. We'll see, they're still debating it because it's still gonna cost like $18.2 million to build the dorms for, I think it's a 96-bed dorm. So we'll see if that makes it into the budget, but that's sort of the compromise that they came up with, which seems like a more reasonable response to building a whole new university system in rural Kentucky. Louisiana, again, kind of like Florida and some of the other states we've seen, no surprise in the South that there has been a big push for military and veteran-friendly campuses, ensuring that there are designated officials and staff who serve as liaisons to help military students, dependents, and their families, you know, engage in school, stay in school, and also sort of get the credit from their educational programs that they engaged in the armed forces and ensure that they get some credit for that, and trying to find a way to create a standardized agreement where, you know, you did this training, it counts for this much credit, or it's the equivalent of this class. They're still sort of working on that, but again, that's something that kind of impacts the South specifically very well. North Carolina, they've done a bunch. I know computer science was mentioned earlier. They're actually studying whether to require a computer science course or courses in order to be accepted for undergraduate admissions in the University of North Carolina system. That was actually a recommendation from like their Women in STEM Advisory Committee to sort of get folks more interested in STEM earlier on in high school so that when they go to college, you have more women in the STEM fields. I haven't seen the report yet. I believe it's still in progress, but it's very interesting, and computer science is definitely an area that's trending, particularly with AI, just folding that into the computer science curriculum. They're also have another proposal that is specifically for a community and technical college, but as part of the study, they are also looking at the feasibility of expanding it to the university system, but they're going to offer in-state tuition to select Georgia counties that are on the border with North Carolina to try to encourage and poach some of those students, which, again, we work for the whole South, so I'm not encouraging y'all to poach talent from other states, but it definitely seems to be something that people are looking at, so that's something else to consider. And then just a simple bill of allowing some of their state university system employees to cash in some of their accrued leave benefits, specifically some bonus leave that they received in the COVID years. So just sort of a way to retain staff, which is also an issue. We talk a lot about retention of students, but retention of staff has been an issue at all levels of education as well. In Oklahoma, they're freezing their tuition. They're working on freezing their tuition and fees so that the approved tuition rates, which are for the 2023-2024 academic year, are continued on at least through the 2026-2027 academic year. Oklahoma, just looking at some information from the Education Data Project, the average cost for an undergraduate degree in Oklahoma is about 19% less than the national average, but it has increased by about 1% each of the last several years. And so this is just a temporary freeze to sort of see if, provide some relief to families and allow it to be affordable, while also kind of studying to see, does it impact enrollment trends at all? I'm 99.9% sure it will pass. The author is actually Senator Pugh, who is the chair of the Senate Education Committee. So I would imagine that's going to pass if it's going through his committee. But as you all surely know, legislatures are unpredictable at the best of times. So I would hazard a guess that it will pass. I don't know if it'll extend beyond that temporary sort of 2-year freeze. But it's definitely something I've heard a lot of concerns about, specifically when I've been in Oklahoma City, about just sort of the constant, slowly tick up in tuition costs and sort of how can they balance that out with the services that are being provided. Texas actually had 3 bills that all dealt with pregnant or parenting students, which I thought was really interesting as we were talking about enrollment and sort of how do you address those factors that are non-tuition related but that impact enrollment. So simple ones such as just requiring that a staff member be designated as a liaison to all students who are the parent of a minor child, and sort of just serving as like an advisor to track them, make sure that they know of services that are available, whether it's childcare, housing subsidies, employment, transportation assistance, and also just advising them on the protections they have in terms of leave and priority enrollment, things like that. He also added non-discrimination protections for students who are pregnant or are the parent of a legal guardian, and it requires, the board is working right now on establishing the minimum periods for which leaves of absence must be given to parents who are pregnant or have a minor child. So again, just protecting them, ensuring that they don't drop out, that they stay in school, and that they are aware of the services provided to them. And then the last one was a really simple bill. It just said if you offer early registration to any group of students, you have to also offer it to students who are parents. Just clean and simple, but will make a big difference. I mean, you would think so, but from the testimony that I looked at that was on their legislative calendar, it did seem like there were some students who were commenting in the public testimony that their institution was giving them a hard time about taking a leave of absence for like a child's illness or something like that, and that, cause them to fail a class and have to retake it, which is expensive, especially if you're a parent paying for childcare. And so it's kind of, like you said, you think that it would already sort of be there and built in, but this is just sort of an extra thing to make sure that it is built in and not leaving it to sort of the institutional discretion.
It's very easy for higher ed to get tangled in its own red tape.
Yes.
Which is, you know, I
For
think
these
part
bills
of
to make your list, what is that? Are they looking like they'll pass? Is it kind of a best guess? Or-
So these 2023 ones have passed,
Okay.
and the 2024 ones are still, in the works.
Yeah, just-
Yeah, but all these Texas ones passed. I believe almost all unanimously. There's always one or two votes against a bill. But yeah, it was very popular. Again, I think it came back to like, oh, we weren't doing this already. Let's do it now. Lastly, again, I've heard this mentioned earlier, but looking at sort of how do you tie internships or apprenticeships into higher ed. Virginia looked at a bill, enacted a bill actually, that is going to study whether it is feasible to add a paid or unpaid internship or work-based learning requirement into every degree program, as long as it doesn't extend the time that they're enrolled in school. So they're studying it right now, trying to figure out a way to do that without, adding more fees or costs or time onto students' degrees. The other bill, which I think is interesting, which just passed unanimously in the Senate like 2 days ago and is now in the House, is they're prohibiting legacy or donor status admissions. So regardless of whether you're the family of a alum or you're the family or you're part of a family that donated a lot of money to the school, ensuring that you don't get preferential admissions treatment based on that status. Again, that's something that seems widely popular, passed unanimously, which is pretty rare in most states, so good to see. And then the last one was just looking at, again, there's a rural area in South Central Virginia where there exists the only workforce training program for offshore wind turbine workers. And so they're looking at sort of how can they tie that existing sort of workforce program into the higher ed ecosystem. And so there's a 2-year institution there, and they're trying to add select 4-year sort of degree programs and partner with Dominion Energy and some of these other energy companies to provide these opportunities. All right. I know there's a lot of information. It's a very high level. As I mentioned, there's 2,500 plus bills going around. Higher ed is always a topic. So I'm happy to answer any questions, follow up on any of this information. But the biggest trends that we're seeing are a lot of the things y'all mentioned about aligning higher ed to workforce, removing barriers that stop community and technical college systems from connecting with their partners at higher ed, and just really investing in the support services such as for pregnant students, for food insecurity, things that are not tuition and fee related, since most states have implemented some form of reduced or free tuition program.
Madam Chair. First of all, I want to say, as a fellow Cal's alumni, was Scott, huge fan of the Council of State Governments in general and SLC specifically. Kind of going back a little bit, I didn't interrupt you at the beginning, but
Oh, no worries.
so when you're referring to dual and concurrent enrollment, are you specifically you're talking about high school and post-secondary at the same time, or has there also been a look at how many of the states have also done the dual admission where you're talking about being in the community college and the 4-year institution at the same time with both of those institutions tracking? I know UTEP and some other places have done that before. We have reverse transfer, but with that, are you seeing that in some other states as well?
Yeah, and sort of in both areas. Just off the top of my head, I know Georgia had looked at sort of aligning, so just not allowing kids to take any class for dual enrollment, but it has to fit within some parameters for either committing sort of your basic curricula, with English 101, Math 101, whatever, or specific career-related field. Other states like Virginia have looked at career and technical education and allowing sort of concurrent enrollment. So while you're in high school, you can leave, go to the career college or technical college on the street, and you graduate high school with your diploma, a credential, and college credit. and then you can go into a 2-year and finish your AA or go into higher ed. So sort of seen both. But the Georgia concern is something that I've heard other states mention, is that the cost of dual enrollment and sort of scaling back what classes can qualify for that.
Sure. And on one other issue, the artificial intelligence, we've got legislation that's pending right now on AI. It's both in higher ed, K-12. What's a good policy look like? I mean, I know this is a very difficult question to answer. We met with the National Association of State Boards of Education, and gosh, we ended up spending an hour on that. But is there somebody to look to? Is there some best practice developed yet, or is it everybody's kind of groping a little bit in the dark on it? So.
Yeah, so we actually have a report that I wrote coming out probably in a couple weeks, just looking at AI regulations generally. But what we've seen is sort of a patchwork. There's a lot of study committees going on for just looking at what is appropriate, what isn't. You know, like a lot of policies that start in the EU eventually make their way over to the US. And so there is some thoughts that, you know, that's eventually going to happen. Congress, you know, has some bills that are looking at that, but we'll see if if they preempt anything in the states. I haven't seen any like specific full sort of policy guidelines that are amazing or best practices. But there's some like standard ideas that seem to be part of the consensus, such as, you know, ensuring that there's always a human backstop. There's always, you know, the final reviewer of anything involving AI or machine learning is a actual physical person. You know, ensuring that there is no private or confidential information entered into sort of a chatbot or something like that. So some basic sort of computer hygiene stuff. But yeah, I haven't seen anything that's a fully developed plan yet. I think a lot of state legislators are still grappling with it and understanding what it is and what it isn't. So I'm sure that'll come as the sessions wrap up this year.
Any other questions for Mr. Allen? Thank you very much. It was very
Thank you.
informative. Appreciate the time.
Yeah, thank you so much for everything y'all do.
Next, we'll hear from Dr. Jacob Kamer, data strategist regarding the food insecurity report. Dr. Kamer, you are recognized.
Thank you so much, and good morning, Dr. Gentile, Chairwoman Scarlett, Commissioners. My name is Jacob Kamer, and today I'll be sharing a high-level overview of our recent report on food insecurity in higher education. We released our final report in December of last year alongside a comprehensive literature review, both of which I'm very pleased to say received national attention. You should have a full copy of the report at your seats, but you can also access the report online along with the comprehensive literature review and a roster of food pantries and other resources across the state via the QR code on the screen. To give you some background context, this work harkens back to legislation passed in 2022. Tennessee Code Annotated 497214 charged THEC with the creation of this report. And in addition to the report and the literature review, we also hosted a statewide convening of researchers, policy advocates, and campus personnel to discuss this topic. You can also find a recording of that convening and a transcript thereof also via the QR code on the screen. In addition to that, we also surveyed campus administrators who oversee basic needs interventions at each campus. We'll go into more detail on the survey and the results thereof later in the presentation, but before I get too far ahead of myself, I'll share two more thoughts. One is that THEC was very fortunate and grateful to have Ms. Amala Funi leading up so much of this work. She's our former graduate assistant, and she came to THEC with a strong background in student basic needs research and practices, which was really instrumental in getting this work off the ground. The other thought I wanted to share is that this has been a space that's continued to evolve in recent months. A great example of that is with the release of the National Post-Secondary Student Aid Survey results in July of last year. That gave us the very first national estimates of what food insecurity looks like across college campuses. Now, you may already be wondering, when I say food insecurity, what does that even mean? How is that even measured? And the short answer is there's not a single definition, but the most common definition and most commonly used comes from the U.S. Department of Agriculture. An abbreviated version of that definition is on the screen. The full definition reads, food insecurity is the limited or uncertain availability of nutritionally adequate and safe foods or limited or uncertain ability to acquire acceptable foods in socially acceptable ways. So when we're identifying an individual or a student who may be experiencing food insecurity, that's done so from responses to a specific item set on a survey. The combined responses to that item set would put an individual in one of 4 categories, which you see on the screen, ranging from high food security to very low food security. Typically, individuals falling into those bottom 2 categories are the ones we would say this person is experiencing food insecurity, but depending on the study or the context, students fitting into that marginal food security bucket may also be considered. We know food insecurity is a transitional state, so it's something someone experiences at a given point in time. So the questions used to determine someone's food insecurity status typically ask the individual to reflect on the past 30 days when they're responding. Now, even though it is a transitional state, we also know that some individuals, some students, may experience food insecurity since childhood. So for them, it's become more of a normalized chronic state of being. We know that food insecurity is not normally distributed among populations. So different subgroups of students are going to experience higher rates of food insecurity than others, and that's also going to vary across where those students are enrolled. We know that research on this topic has linked experiencing food insecurity to poor academic performance, reduced credit hour accumulation, and other mental and physical health concerns. A topic that we'll introduce in the report is food deserts, or geographic locations that are isolated from food options. So more specifically, these are areas where a significant number or share of the residents are more than 1 mile away for urban areas or more than 10 miles away for rural areas from the nearest grocery store. So what you see on the screen is an overlay of USDA's map of known food deserts in the state of Tennessee with the locations of our post-secondary institutions' main campuses. Now, certainly this is not to imply that people living in those green areas are experiencing food insecurity. It's just to underscore that they have limited food options in those areas. And as you can immediately see, looking at this map, that some institutions' main campuses are located directly in a food desert. Others are on the periphery of a food desert. What you don't see on the map, which is just as important, is that many of these institutions have branch or satellite locations that are serving food deserts. So really, by sharing this map, I hope to underscore that when we talk about food insecurity in Tennessee higher education, it's a conversation that's going to look different. It's a story that's going to look different for every institution across the state. Also, you will find a copy of this map on page 10 of the report that includes the legend. I cut the legend off just to make it fit on the slide deck a bit better, but you should have a full copy of that map in the report. So turning to what we learned from our research on this topic, we would estimate that up to 30% of Tennessee post-secondary students may be food insecure or may experience some degree of food insecurity. Now, as with all statistics, there are caveats and grains of salt to be had. So 3 caveats I will share with you include whether we take students who are marginally food insecure into consideration, or in other words, the students who are on the cusp of becoming food insecure. 2, being the overall representativeness of available data on this topic to Tennessee's actual population. And 3, the fact that many students who are not chronically insecure or food insecure may be unwilling to disclose their food insecurity status due to feeling stigmatized. From our survey, we learned that every institution is doing something to mitigate food insecurity on their campuses, but everyone's doing something different. So the scope and scale of services across all institutions is going to vary. We also learned that most institutions, too, reported that they do not have an established budget to support food insecurity interventions, and that their staff would benefit from additional training on SNAP eligibility requirements. Here's a continued snapshot of some of the responses we received on our survey of campus administrators. When we asked which programs exist for students at that institution, the most common response we heard, as you might expect, was a food pantry. Other common responses included access to emergency aid, mental health services, and online resources. When we asked what additional resources could help alleviate barriers to food insecurity, the most common responses we received related to allocated funding, a committed space on campus, and other responses pertaining to building awareness and support in the campus and the surrounding community. I will note that in the report, the appendix has a much more nuanced breakdown of what services were available at institutions at the time we surveyed, including whether those services were offered directly through the institution or through a third-party provider. So in our final report, we leave our readers with 4 recommendations on where we could go forward from here. The first being improving communication on existing federal and state resources. This could take the form of regular statewide convenings, not all that dissimilar from the one that THEC hosted when we were compiling this report. Those convenings would pull together scholars, practitioners, policymakers, and policy advocates into the same conversation to share best practices and to discuss where resources may be needed most. Our second recommendation is to dedicate resources to campuses to support basic needs. Tennessee Code Annotated 497214 pulled THEC into the conversation, but it did not establish any support mechanisms to move the work forward. So under this recommendation, we would encourage campuses to take stock of the financial needs of their ongoing interventions and see how that could fit into current institutional budgets or if additional state support might be necessary. Our third recommendation is an extension of that, and that's exploring the adoption of a Tennessee Hunger-Free Campus Bill. At this time, a small cadre of states are already participating in a Hunger-Free Campus Bill, I think 10 at this time. The Hunger-Free Campus Bill gives a framework for standards and best practices when addressing food insecurity on college campuses, and some states that have adopted the Hunger-Free Campus Bill have used that as a mechanism to provide financial support to these sorts of interventions. And lastly, because there are more unknowns than there are knowns when it comes to food insecurity in higher education, our recommendation is to promote additional research and evaluation in this space. 2 suggestions we posit is the creation of a statewide survey of students, and the other being the establishment of a competitive request for proposals to support independent researchers interested in this topic. So to round out my presentation, if you're interested and have not already subscribed to our listserv, I highly encourage you to do so. That way you're among the first in the know when our team puts out new content. You can access the listserv via the QR code, which will also take you to all of our other reports that we put out. So with that, I thank you for your time and your attention, and if you have questions on our food insecurity report, I'd be happy to address those.
I have not, of course, had a chance to read your report, but I wonder, do you have at this point any information relative to food insecurity at a TCAT, community college, or university, how it breaks down among our kinds of institutions?
In our survey, we asked the campus administrators to estimate this for us. So really underscoring that it's not representative, but they each gave us an estimate as to how much or what share of their population may be experiencing food insecurity based on who's using resources on campus.
And what did you find when you looked at those numbers?
Typically, all figures point to 30% from a statewide perspective. There's a lot of variance across institutional types. One other resource, which I can certainly direct you toward, was created by the Hope Center out of Temple University. The Hope Center has been heavily engaged in student basic needs research for a long time. And with the passage or the release of the NIPSAS results in July of last year, they gave an excellent summary of how food insecurity looks like across different types of college campuses across the nation. It can vary quite dramatically, as low as maybe 18%, as high as 35%.
So I think I didn't frame my question very clearly. What I'm asking is, would we find 30% food insecurity at a community college just as likely as we would at a 4-year university?
You will see some variance.
That's what I'm
You're
talking
more
about.
likely to see it at community colleges.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Great question.
Jacob, question, 2 of your suggestions, one being the additional resources being applied, and the second one being some legislative action, seem to be pretty challenging suggestions. What are your thoughts on the ability to achieve success in both those areas?
I think when it comes to anything food insecurity, no matter the perspective, so much of this is going to come down to the communication of what's available. Relative to legislation, and I'll defer to Dr. Gentile and my colleague Lou Hanneman, who have much more insight into that aspect of this. But I am curious to see where House Bill 1914 is going to move forward, which would be, or would establish, if it passes, a hunger-free campus grant for institutions that are already actively engaged and have food pantries available to give them some financial support to either help with building awareness in the community or to help fund their food pantries.
If I may.
Did that answer your question? Perfect.
First part, in terms of resources, are you suggesting resources? Suggesting resources by THEC to the colleges and universities, or resources from other sources?
That's a really good point, and thank you for clarifying that. In this case, I think THEC does have a role. I think our role really fits nicely in that communication, so being able to pull the stakeholders into the same conversation to see where resources are needed most. Institutions obviously know their student populations better than anyone else. Some have much larger populations than others, so their need for resources may look substantially different from a smaller institution. So I think for us, the first challenge is just to get these people in the room and continue the conversation.
Commissioner Stafford, to your second question, first of all, thank you, Dr. Kamer, for your presentation. To your second question, the bills that have come in the past and this year, right now, just dropped today, actually, have great bipartisan support. And it's been a great, I'd say, force from the student. This has been coming about over the last few years. I believe UT Knoxville, the student group at UT Knoxville is the one who brought the idea for the bill to have a report like this done. And that same movement, I'd say, out east is continuing the conversation for the legislation that we just saw, which dropped. I don't know if it will pass or not, but it does have, I'd say, wide support, apparently.
What is the kind of average annual cost to solving this problem?
That's a very complicated question and a very good one at that. If we look at it from the states that have passed a hunger-free campus bill and how much they have dedicated to this conversation, it ranges anywhere from $0. Some states just adopt the policy framework or the framework of best practices. Those that do dedicate resources, it's ranged anywhere from $150,000 to $1.5 million. California is an exception to that. I think they're over $7 to $7.5 million they're dedicating, or at least have tied to the Hunger-Free Campus bill, which is either in the form of a grant or in the form of appropriations based on the size of the institution.
Is that $7.5 million for like all of California institutions?
Yes.
Okay.
What is that estimated for Tennessee? Any idea?
I don't know if we have an estimate of Tennessee, because this is going to be such an institutional question too.
Yeah, we did some research some years back on completion grants, which have now, those are in a trial period right now as well. And a lot of institutions of the university types of looking at all the issues that are affecting students, whether it's food insecurity or transportation or medical bills, we're dedicating, let's say the larger universities, about $150,000 to $200,000 a year, and it would range on down to about $10,000 at some of our TCATs back then. And that was about 7 years ago when we did that research. So I would say, from hearing what you said about the states that have it and hearing what we know about California, it's not a substantial amount of money per campus. It's just the aggregate might be large, but we'll look more into what the per campus is at other states. Yeah.
Any other questions for Dr. Kamer? Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Appreciate the information. Next, we'll hear from Jessica Gibson, Senior Director of Adult Learners Initiatives, Miranda Miller, Reconnect Reentry Director, Robert Gledhill, Reentry Navigator, and Jeremy White from the Department of Labor and Workforce Development, Office of Reentry. It's all regarding the Reconnect Reentry Program.
Thank you. And good morning. Commissioner Scarlett, members of the commission. I appreciate the opportunity to be here today to present the work of THEC's Reconnect Reentry Navigators. As Dr. Gentile said earlier, THEC has a lot of stories to tell, and this is one of them, albeit I think an important one. In 2019, Governor Lee launched the Corrections Educational Investment Initiative, which, among other components, expanded our Reconnect Navigators work into state-run prisons. So as a refresher, THEC oversees a program called Navigate Reconnect, and our navigators work with adults to either help them re-enroll in college or enroll for the first time by providing information on college programs, admissions and enrollment processes, financial aid, as well as support services and resources that are non-academic, around non-academic challenges like childcare, transportation, food insecurity, really anything that would hinder an adult's ability to remain enrolled in college. So in 2019, we hired 3 Reconnect Reentry navigators specifically to work with adults who had felony convictions, whether they were still incarcerated or had been released. So currently we have 6 reentry Reconnect navigators who are serving 2,787 justice-involved individuals. So today, I and 2 reentry navigators and a colleague from the Office of Reentry with the Department of Labor would like to provide more information about the work that we do with justice-involved individuals. So before we get started, I wanted to call your attention to some terms you're going to hear during the presentation and explain what they mean. The students our reentry navigators work with are justice-involved individuals, meaning they've had interactions with the justice system as a defendant. Reconnector is a term that we use to identify any adult learner, whether or not they are justice-involved. Once a student is released from prison, they are back in the free world, which is outside the prison walls. College programs inside prisons we refer to as HEP or PEP programs to make it easier. They're post-secondary education, higher education, and prison programs. And CEI is a Corrections Education Investment Initiative implemented by Governor Lee in 2019. So the CEI provides credentialed post-secondary education opportunities for incarcerated individuals in an organized effort, building a system where an incarcerated person can further their education as part of the rehabilitative process. The CEI program provided the Department of Correction with resources for the infrastructure of HEP programs inside the facilities. It provided TBR with resources to stand up several TCAT and community college programs in prisons like business administration, computer information technology, building construction trades. It provided the Tennessee Higher Education and Prison Initiative, which is a local nonprofit that has been standing up HEP programs in Tennessee since 2011, with resources to provide on-site student support services to the community college programs inside the prisons. And it provided THEC with resources to expand the navigation services inside the prisons as well. So I want to recognize how important the partnerships between these agencies and organizations are in reaching justice-involved individuals and connecting them to college opportunities. We meet regularly, and by regularly, probably weekly, with these other agencies and groups to assist each other in identifying, understanding, and solving challenges, to plan for expansion of programs and stakeholder engagement, and to make post-secondary education more accessible to justice-involved individuals. This program is unlike any other program in the country, and we've grown a collaborative effort with common goals and open dialogue. So why is this work important? Apart from providing greater access to college for an underserved population, which is part of THEC's mission, it's important that we do not relegate these students to an unseen minority. Half of Tennesseans have a family member who has been incarcerated, half. 1/3 of Tennesseans has a criminal background. 50,000 Tennesseans are currently incarcerated in jails and prisons, and 95% will return home to their communities. But finding work is not easy for those with felony convictions and with limited education. And the unemployment rate for justice-involved Tennesseans is 27%, and nearly half will be reincarcerated within 3 years. Education opportunities, however, have shown a significant impact on those numbers. Incarcerated people who participate in post-secondary education are 48% less likely to recidivate. That means to be reincarcerated. And it's estimated that in Tennessee, the employment rate for formerly incarcerated people who participated in post-secondary education would increase 4.8% for men and 5% for women in the first year post-release, resulting in an increased combined annual earnings of all formerly incarcerated workers during their year of release, so that's their first year back in the free world, of over $766,000. So providing access to college programs for justice-involved individuals benefits both the individual and our state at large. Yes.
I am astounded. 1 in 3 Tennesseans. How do we compare with states around us? Do you know?
I don't know, but I can find out. We actually got these statistics from the Office of Reentry with the Department of Labor and Workforce Development, and we can dig in a little bit more and find out.
Did it surprise you?
It floored me.
That's the
I
way
was
feel.
floored.
And I'm sorry to interrupt. I just wondered if I was the only one in the room who was picking myself up off the floor. Okay.
You're not the
Thank
only
you.
one.
Thank you.
Absolutely. So as we look forward, we first have to review where we are. So most of the work of our navigators has been inside the prison facilities, either directing students to programs that exist in the facilities or to helping them prepare post-release to enroll in a program in the free world. But last year, we were able to hire 3 additional reentry navigators, doubling our staff size, which has enabled the team to serve more free world reconnectors. So our intention in the coming year is to increase our caseload of that category of student. So those who either did not have access to HEP, higher education program in prison, or who started it and then were released prior to finishing the program. So we want to help them transition to the free world by connecting them again to college opportunities. Overall, the interest in the navigator services continues to grow, increasing 32% between fiscal year 22 and 23. As I mentioned before, partnerships are incredibly important. We could not do this without each other. And THEC is part of the Tennessee Prison College Coalition in partnership with TBR, TDOC, Tennessee Higher Education and Prison Initiative, and Department of Labor's Offices of Reentry and Adult Education. So we also meet regularly and work together on issues of program quality, Pell Grant reinstatement, data collection needs, communities of practice, and innovation and expansion. So separately and together, our agencies participate in regional HEP collaboratives with other states. We attend and present at conferences and participate in national networks of technical assistance and resource providers. So we want to continue to build those partnerships in the coming year. Oops, sorry. And finally, our Reconnect Reentry team would like to invite each of you on the commission to visit a prison facility in your region in which our navigators work, to better understand the work they do, to see the facility, to hear from students, and meet correction staff. So I'm currently working with TDOC to schedule some dates in the spring, and once those are solidified, we'll send those out with a formal invitation RSVP. We'd also like to invite you to join us for a reentry simulation here in Nashville on March 26th at 1 p.m. It's led by the Office of Reentry with the Department of Labor and Workforce Development, and it's intended to help us gain an understanding of the significant obstacles faced by men and women attempting to navigate the system upon their release from incarceration and returning home. We will also send out information specifically about that. So now I'd like to turn the remaining time over to 3 speakers who will share firsthand perspectives on the work. But before I do, I want to recognize our team of reentry navigators. All 6 are here today. They've traveled far and wide to be here, and I'm glad that they're here. So our first speaker is Miranda Miller. Ms. Miller has been a reentry navigator since early 2020, working in the West region in 3 facilities. So just recently, Miranda was promoted to the director of the Reconnect Reentry program, and she will share with you some challenges faced both by navigators and justice-involved reconnectors and the flexibility required to overcome the challenges.
Good morning. Good morning, Chairwoman Scarlett and members of the commission. I first just want to say thank you. Thank you all for giving us the opportunity to come and share with you in the work that we do. The work that we do as navigators can be very rewarding. As a matter of fact, we have a manifestation of those rewards with us here today. And we often know that with rewards, there's always challenges. We as navigators face challenges daily to the work that we do. Challenges that has the potential to change the outcome and progress of the services that we provide. We face obstacles such as long, excessive wait lines at checkpoint that can take an hour to an hour and a half to clear. What does that mean for us as a navigator? It means missed appointments. Our reconnectors don't have the leisure to wait 35 to 45 minutes for us to get to our post. We face the lockdowns, facility incidents, and issues that halt the movement on the compounds. No movement, no advising. We also are facing DOC staff shortages, which is actually, it affects the communication of our reconnect schedules to the units. If we can't get our schedules to the units, to the people that we need to see, they can't get the permission to come to see us. No advising takes place. But not only are we affected by these obstacles, our reconnectors are too. If the reconnectors are not meeting with the navigator, then they are missing the opportunities to learn about the various training programs that's available for them inside the facility and externally in the free world. They are needing this information from us to be able to be successful. Our reconnectors don't have the privilege of being able to research and seek out program information on computers. They have no access. We become their search engines. We are the ones that research these programs. We go home and we print them out because we have little to no printing access at our facilities. We print the information out, we bring it back to the facilities, and we provide it to our reconnectors. Our reconnectors know little about online enrollment and admissions processes. They know little about FAFSA applications online, and they know little to nothing about student portals. We as navigators help them to navigate those issues in enrollment. The work that we do is very important, because without the work that we do, many of the reconnectors that we serve would miss out on post-secondary education opportunities, not only due to the obstacles that I just mentioned, but also due to other obstacles such as defaulted student loans. We as navigators help them to initiate the Fresh Start programs and income-driven repayment plans that help them to get those student loans out of default, in good standing, and their financial aid reinstated. They also are navigating, we help them to navigate the issues of balances that they owe to institutions prior to incarceration. We initiate phone calls to the institution, which allows the reconnector to find out what their balance is and also to set up a payment plan if at all possible. We deal with these different situations daily, and it's very challenging at sometimes when we don't have access to phones or different things like that, but we continue to do what we do. We love what we do. We believe in what we do. And with the challenges that we all face, we as navigators know that we have to be flexible in the work that we do. No 2 days are always the same. We never know what to expect each day when we head to the facilities. The days can be very frustrating, very disheartening, and very disappointing. But we, as navigators, we go home each day, we shake it all off, we get up the next day, we square our shoulders, and we go back and we do it all over again. And we go back and we do it all over again because we believe in the work that we do. We believe in the people that we serve, and we believe that we can make a difference. So with all the frustrations that we face, it's worth it to be able to say, one made it. And we go back each day for that one. And I just want to thank you all for giving me the opportunity to share with you in the work that we do.
Thank you, Miranda. Our next speaker is Robert Gledhill. Mr. Gledhill is a reentry navigator. Come on up. Serving the East Region. New to the team last year, Mr. Gledhill is a veteran and former correctional officer who has transitioned to working on our team and supporting individuals to college opportunities. Robert.
Good morning, everyone. Chairwoman Scarlett, members of the commission, thank you for having me. As a former reentry counselor with TDOC, the introduction of Navigate Reconnect was groundbreaking. The proactive approach compared to the reactive approach allowed the reconnector to see a different view to being released. I tried my hardest to get as many referrals as I could to help open up the position, and it kind of worked out. So My time with TDOC was very beneficial, but when you just allow yourself to give resources and referrals when they're not even released yet, they don't have the one-on-one. Navigate Reconnect definitely opened up a whole new bridge. As a security and rehabilitation side, Navigate Reconnect aligned themselves with the area of reentry within TDOC. This implemented self-esteem building, optimism, inner soul searching. When an individual comes to you and sits down and you tell them about the program, and they say, wow, I can put shoes on my children's feet. Or I can't wait to walk in front of my children to see that prison's not the answer, education is. That is what exactly intrigued me to the position. For the Reconnector, a post-secondary completion allows a better opportunity, stronger family structure, and inspiration to others. What this brings is what I didn't see a lot, which was hope. That gets lost at the intake process coming into prison, and at times during their sentence. Our seamless transition where we come in and do the intake interview, as well as following them out once they're released, it is such a benefit and a life-changing situation that you can just see it. Any team member over here can tell you about a success story. One I'd like to highlight that just happened recently, and I'm going to brag a little bit, but as a counselor, this individual was getting out. He was intrigued with the program. We did the intake process. Before he got out, we did the admissions over the phone, and although we're in the East region, he was going to TCAT Nashville. He just graduated, and I just made my year mark, so it was kind of like, all right. We actually got invited to go to his graduation ceremony, and he understood if we can't go because he knows and understood we have the work to do. And I told him he's a walking poster board. And that's what we want. That's exactly what we need. I want to thank my team members for being so brave to go inside a facility. It's not the easiest place to work. And I want to thank THEC for being brave enough to allow us and open up this program and reach those who need it. Thank you. Enjoy the rest of the presentation.
Okay, our final presenter today is Mr. Jeremy White from the Office of Reentry in the Department of Labor and Workforce Development. After serving 22 years in the Tennessee Department of Corrections, Jeremy White is now a student, graduate, alum, and steward of reentry. He serves roles as an administrative assistant in the newly formed Office of Reentry in the Tennessee Department of Labor and Workforce Development. Jeremy is also a transition coach with the Tennessee Higher Education and Prison Initiative and a committed leader of the THEI Alumni Network. He's an advocate and trainer with the Free Hearts Organization and a full-time student at Austin Peay State University and made the Dean's List for spring of 2023. Congratulations. He has an associate degree in business administration and is working towards his bachelor's in finance with an emphasis on urban economics. In addition, Jeremy is the co-owner of Double R Strategies and Consulting. Jeremy.
Chairwoman Scarlett, honorable members of the commission, if I had to say one word, it's grateful. I graduated in 1998 from Wooddale High School in Memphis, and I was most outgoing senior. I had a scholarship to UAPB, lovely family, and a year later, in 1999, I was at 201 Poplar, facing 120 years in prison with 5 Class A felonies. After a long tenure at 201 Poplar, from 19 to the age of 24, after making amends, working with the victim, working with the district attorney, seeing the tragedies that happened to my parents, learning about a system that I had to navigate at an early age, I was afforded an opportunity to be blessed to not have to do a life sentence in the Tennessee Department of Corrections. I did 22 years on a 25-year sentence at 100%, and in that 22 years, faced a violent, volatile correctional system, but also I was afforded with the opportunity to learn about higher education because of the higher education programs in prison. In 2018, Tennessee Higher Education in Prison Initiative was introduced to me at Turney Center Industrial Complex. At that time, it was under the helm of Dr. Julie Duchin, transferred to Molly Lasagna, and now is under Dr. Laura Ferguson Mims, who is a leader of an organization that is making transitional change throughout this state. At that time, I also got an opportunity to meet Miss Sue Lee, who's a reentry navigator, and she changed my life. She's an individual that sat down with me with just a laptop, a pen and a pad, and she said, where do you want to go? What do you want to do? How do you want to do it? What can I get to you? How can I call? Who can I call? How are you going to do it? You can do it. And so from 2018 until I was released in 2021, I continued the higher education program in prison. And as I continued that, I charted my own path of what I wanted to do when I got out. But a navigator is who helped me to understand how to do a FAFSA. A navigator was someone that taught me, here's a college you can go to. Here's what Tennessee Reconnect is. Here's what the Tennessee Student Assistance Corporation is. Here's where you can find scholarships. Here's how you access Tennessee Promise, because unknown to me, I never knew any of that existed. Just like I never knew about an AJC, an American Job Center, until I got home and really learned about what the state of Tennessee was doing, what this commission was doing, what bodies across the state are doing, and legislatures to try to help our population. So I graduated from Nashville State Community College in August of 22. I applied for the newly formed Tennessee Office of Reentry that opened in 2021 by Governor Lee. I got a job with the Department of Labor and Workforce Development, and I then left after Nashville State and went to Austin Peay State University, where I'm now a junior, seeking my bachelor's in finance and urban economics. After that, I'm going to seek my master's in corporate law, and I'm sure some of y'all will see me here in the future. But I stand here today as a person who's grateful. I'm grateful because I was blessed to have a system that cared enough about me, also cared enough about the victim, cared enough about us having a dialogue, cared enough about bridging gaps, and looked past my mistakes at the age of 19 and cared enough about putting the system in prison of higher education where I could be more than just a person sitting in prison, using drugs, fighting, having mental health issues in a place where nothing. It's just concrete, steel, brick, walls. And I had higher education. It got me out of a cell. It allowed me to think. It allowed me to be more than where I was. And having access to a navigator, to a team of individuals that allow me to think more than that is something that's very special to me. Sue Lee stood with me when I graduated with my cohort at Turney Center. She stood with me since I've been out with TBR, where I speak. She's engaged with me the entire time since I've been home, and I can't even begin to tell you how much that has meant to me, that a woman has cared enough to sit down with a laptop, a pen and a pad, and help change my life, and watched me from prison all the way to Austin Peay State University, and she helped me chart that course. More importantly is that you all here allowed for that to happen. The reentry population is a population that needs to be served. They need to be served because they are changing. I shift the culture in prison. I go in and speak. I've developed a relationship with the Tennessee Department of Corrections. I'm helping move the needle, and we're trying to really make changes with justice-involved individuals throughout this state. And the fact that the agencies are aligning and are removing silos and are trying to make differences, it speaks volumes to the leadership that we have and what you're trying to do for the state of Tennessee, and I'm grateful. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. White. And Sue, will you wave? There's Sue. I just want to thank our speakers today for sharing their perspectives and stories, and we'll take any questions if you have any. Yes.
And so understanding that one barrier to entry, I'm so sorry. Understanding that we're overcoming one of the barriers, which is education within the prison, I would assume maybe another barrier would be once you have the education and you're in the workforce, you're looking for a job, but you have the criminal background. Are we doing anything to try to address that, to give these people some relief where maybe those records should be expunged, or maybe there's something we could do to?
That is a barrier. And actually, the Office of Reentry, Jeremy might actually be able to answer that. The Office of Reentry with the Department of Labor is working towards just
Okay.
that.
Yeah, thanks. I'm interested in that. Thank you.
Okay. So right now, what the Tennessee Office of Reentry has done is repurpose staff in the American AJCs, and we now have what you call reentry advisors. So when individuals are transitioning back into society, they're called returning citizens. You can now access any American Job Center across the state. There's 21 comprehensive centers, and when you walk into it and identify as justice involved, the suite of services offered by the state is open to that individual. So if they need access to Title I, Title II, Title III, if it's adult ed, if it's SNAP ENT, if it's SNAP benefits, when they cross the threshold of that AJC, they're getting the services that they need. We tried to make it where returning citizens know. A lot of individuals in prison just weren't aware. Like a lot of people weren't aware of higher education programs, aware of reentry advisors. So the governor has allowed the Office of Reentry, because we're state funded, to be able to market that to the individuals and work with agencies and really give them a sense of the work that we're doing. We're the first Office of Reentry in the nation under labor. We're non-corrections related. And Governor Lee really took a step out and said, hey, we need to increase the labor force. Reentry is the new face of workforce. 27% of justice-involved individuals are unemployed. We have the highest unemployment rate. And so what we did was, and to answer Ms. Coben's question earlier, 1 in 3 Tennesseans, that number came from Criminal Justice Institute, which was hired by the Tennessee Office of Reentry, which did research with the Prison Policy Initiative to learn how many individuals in the state actually have went through the system based on the recidivism rate. So when we started to learn about the numbers, I'm going to give you another number that'll floor you. There's 15,000 Tennesseans coming home every year. So when you look at that number of individuals that are coming home, how can we get them employed? How can we make sure they have housing? How can we make sure that they have access to these resources? The best way to do that was through our American Job Centers that was already set up across the state. And it's really having a great force right now. The KPIs for the Office of Reentry, we've reached over 18,000 individuals just in a matter of 2 years. So when you talk about individuals that are coming out, one of the biggest issues is really working with employers. I've been across the state with all 9 local workforce boards. I've communicated with businesses statewide about what fair chance hiring is, what second chance hiring looks like, but we have to focus on policy and practice. But we also have to be mindful of the public's interest, because like the commissioner said, everybody's in reentry. If you're a dislocated worker, if you're someone who's been in trade impact, if you're someone who's been impacted by the workforce and coming back in. So our population is not just unique. But at the same time, we recognize that it is a population that's growing, and they're coming back out into society. And we want individuals to be the best when they come home and make sure that they have gainful employment, most importantly, sustainable employment. And I can stand here today grateful because when I came out, I started at American Paper and Twine, and I was making a good wage at $18.45 an hour. And you have to work. I tell anyone who's justice impacted, you have to be accountable for you, and you have to work, and you have to want it. And so a lot of times when I speak or I'm speaking to a group, I let them know, don't be mad if you come out and you're making 11 and 12. It's stepping stones. I started down here. I'm up here now. It took 3 years. But I stayed the course. And so as we teach individuals, we're trying to teach them about what that means, what that looks like. And the mindset, we're trying to change the mindset of men and women that have just had years of institutionalized thinking. Did anybody else have any questions?
Mr. White, following up, following up on Commissioner Cope's question, are we seeing a progress being made with the number of employees willing to accept those who have been incarcerated, or is that a struggle to try to get more employers willing to accept?
The struggle is in your rural areas, mainly. A lot of the employers that are in urban areas are open to second chance hiring. I think one of the most, where we do struggle at is that a lot of employers don't want people to know that they hire. They don't want it to be public facing. A lot of times it's a case by case basis. And just to be honest, the biggest population that is having an impact is individuals with special circumstances. We use people first language, i.e. sex offenders, is the population that is the most difficult in this state. But employers are now trying to learn how they can best work with justice-involved individuals. So we're trying to do more training. We're trying to highlight areas where they can make change with their HR. The state of Tennessee Department of Human Resources is even started second chance hiring. The state government has took a step out and said, if we want people to hire, well, we need to be first to say we're hiring. But it's also on the justice involved individual side to know that when you come into a place of professionalism, you have to have professional development. So there has to be career readiness, there has to be leadership development, and so we're trying to establish those programs in the AJCs.
Mr. White, before you leave, and also to tie to the previous question, there's a program out of Seattle that I'm familiar with. It's called, the specific one is called the Trades-Related Apprenticeship Program or Coaching Program. What sort of true apprenticeships, like living wage type apprenticeships, does the Department of Labor provide for people that are coming in, re-entering into the workforce?
So the apprenticeship office has just went undergo, it went some changes, but the new director is really ramping it up on aligning apprenticeships with organizations that actually are hiring individuals. Because if you work with an employer, and it's on the employer whether or not they want to hire. Mm-hmm. Apprenticeship can't make them hire. So if you're someone who's justice impacted and you're going through an apprenticeship program and you go to an employer, you still have to do like any other ordinary citizen does. You have to apply, you have to go in and interview, and if the employer wants to hire you, they can. If they don't, they don't. But I think apprenticeship is really doing something strong now because they're actually seeking out employers that are actually going to work with the individual, if that makes sense. And so they're really making a lot of changes in the apprenticeship program. I salute Shalandria Shaw because she's doing a good job of trying to get employers to really seek out apprenticeships that align with TCAT, that align with THEC, that align with the other organizations across the state. And I think the most important thing is trying to find a matching system. Mm-hmm. So I did, in my 22 years, I became certified as electrical wiring specialist, and I had vocational trades, but there was nothing that would match me with an employer outside of prison. Mm-hmm. So we're trying to find a way where if you're in a vocational trade to match those.
Thank you very much for that perspective. This particular program has a 5% recidivism rate, which I think is spectacular. I think there's a lot to be said there.
And I would highlight THEI, their recidivism rate is 0%.
Thank you for sharing your story, and thank you for doing what you're doing across the state. I think it's really important for people to hear from those that have the experience and are doing what you're doing. So
Thank you,
very much
Chairwoman.
appreciate actually all of you all that came up and spoke. All three of you had very inspiring stories. I'm very grateful that you all were here today to share those stories, because I think it's very important, this sort of work, and being able to ensure that those that are re-entering into the workforce are set up for best success is very important. And if you think about 15,000 people, in the broad spectrum of things, that's not a lot of people. And so what more can this state be doing to support those that are coming back into the workforce? So thank you very much.
You're welcome.
Ms. Gibson?
Thank you for having us today to speak. Yes.
Before you get away from the microphone, thank you so much for what you've done. And please, please let us know the date in late March, I believe it was. And I would like to come with one of your navigators and spend some time.
Great. We would love to have you.
Well, hard as this is to believe, in 1977, the University of Tennessee had a program that offered college credits to individuals who were at Turney Center. And I happened to be like a neophyte, right out of graduate school. I was 27 years old, and I was the director of registration services and went to Turney Center and signed these people up. And I don't know whatever happened to that program, but you all, that's 50 some odd years ago. I'm old. But at any rate, I want to go back, and I want to see what you're doing now.
Absolutely.
Thank you so much.
Thank you. Thank you all.
So the final agenda item is actually other business. So does anyone on the commission have any other business you'd like to bring to the table? Yes, sir?
Madam Chair, I just wanted to publicly congratulate Dr. Gentile. Congratulations on your leadership of the team here, and I am more than tickled to help in any way we can. It is so good in the education space to have folks who are committed to excellence in education, to having a citizenry that is self-sufficient and responsible, and you all are always thinking of ways to get there and to be helpful. And we got a tiny staff on the state board by comparison, but we love any opportunity to partner. Thanks.
And thank you, Mr. James. We are excited, as always, to work hand in hand with the State Board of Education and have you here today, and Dr. Morrison yesterday at our committee hearings as well. I look forward to working with you going forward. Thank you.
Excellent. Well, this concludes our agenda. Our next meeting will be Thursday, May 16th. If there's no further business, we stand adjourned.